Hi everybody, I'm Mawada Serag from 3A. Today I will introduce to you this book. The title is The Twits. The author is Rhonda. The illustrator is Quentin Blake. The type of the book is fiction. The main characters are Mr. Twit, who was a very ugly-looking, hairy-faced man. He had bits of food stuck in his beard, and he didn't even know how to wash his face. The second character is Mrs. Twit, who was a very ugly-looking woman with a walking stick. She has a wonky nose, a crooked mouth, stick-out teeth, and a double chin. Mrs. Twit was actually born very beautiful, but she had very ugly thoughts, so she became very ugly. The third characters are the Muggle monkeys. They are the smartest, skinniest, funniest monkeys in the whole world. They spend their whole life in a metal monkey cage in Mr. and Mrs. Twit's front yard, standing upside down on top of each other. The last main character is the roly-poly bird. The roly-poly bird is a very lazy, beautiful bird that has a shiny tail. The roly-poly bird is actually very kind and helped the monkeys escape their cage. The story happened in Mr. and Mrs. Twit's house and their front yard. The main conflict is Mr. and Mrs. Twit were the cheekiest couple ever seen. They were playing nasty tricks on each other. At first, Mrs. Twit had a glass eye. She put it in Mr. Twit's mug of tea. When Mr. Twit was just taking the last sip, he saw Mrs. Twit's glass eye and got a very big fright. For revenge, Mr. Twit went out to the pond and took one frog from the pond. Then at night he put it in Mrs. Twit's bed. When Mrs. Twit came to sleep, she felt something tickling her feet. And then when she saw the frog came on her face. After that, Mrs. Twit screamed and went to sleep downstairs on the sofa. Next, Mrs. Twit collected some disgusting worms from the garden, and then she put them in Mr. Twit's bowl of spaghetti. When Mr. Twit ate his spaghetti, he didn't even know that the worms were in there. And when he got to know about that there was some worms in his spaghetti, it was very disgusting to see him eat all of these worms without even noticing. To pay Mrs. Twit back for the worms in Mr. Twit's spaghetti, Mr. Twit added an extra piece of wood to her walking stick. And then he did the same to Mrs. Twit's chair. And then Mr. Twit convinced Mrs. Twit that she has the shrinks. She will keep shrinking until she totally disappears. And Mr. Twit suggested that she can get stretched and she will not shrink. So Mr. Twit tied a lot of balloons to Mrs. Twit's arms and tied Mrs. Twit's feet to a string, and the string was held by a metal ring stuck to the ground. And then Mr. Twit cut the string stuck to the ground. with the metal ring. And then Mrs. Twit flew up into the sky. After that, Mrs. Twit had an idea. She popped all of the balloons with her walking stick. Then she landed down. But Mr. Twit was just under her, so she landed down on him, and he was very scared. On Wednesdays, the Twits used to have bird pie for supper, and on Tuesdays, Mr. Twit used a ladder to climb up the dead tree in their front yard, where the birds usually stand on. So Mr. Twit put some sticky glue on the tree so the birds can get stuck to the glue and the Twits can get them and put the birds in their bird pie. Mr. Twit had some monkeys as pets, and he wanted them to stand upside down on top of each other as a circus trick. After Mr. and Mrs. Twit left the house, the roly-poly birds came to the monkeys and got the key to open their cage. After that, the monkeys and the roly-poly bird decided to teach the Twits a lesson. They stuck all of their furniture upside down on top of the ceiling. And then, when the Twits came back, they were very surprised. They stood upside down, and then suddenly they got the real shrinks. So they shrunk until they totally disappeared. I like this book because the ending is very fair. Mr. and Mrs. Twit got to know how it ends when you are very evil. However, I didn't like how Mr. Twit ate all of these worms in his packet. I recommend this book to my sister and friends, and I gave it 4 stars. Bye.